And the big news of the day in sports, the Miami Dolphins do it again. Another Super Bowl victory over the Vikings.
Kidnapped heiress Patricia Hearst shocked the nation today as she assisted her captors in the armed robbery of a bank in San Francisco.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
The Oakland A's captured their third successive world championship.
Tandem Computers, an up-and-coming manufacturer of mainframe systems, announced its first product today. A spokesperson for Tandem stated that the Non-Stop One system will revolutionize the computer industry.
Hi, everyone. I think everyone knows I'm Jimmy Trabig. I want to start the show in a little different way because my daddy's watching this in the Houston, Texas office of Tandem, and I want to assure Dad that this isn't our normal TV show. I think everyone knows that we're a Fortune 500 company. We have the thing full of 500 fortune cookies over here on the left, which I think we saw on an earlier show. In 10 years, Tandem's gone from zero to a Fortune 500 company, which is a great success. But that's not why we're here today. We're here today celebrating 10 years as a company, our 10-year anniversary, which is something that only happens once. We're also celebrating 10 years for lots of us as individuals. But I have to warn you, this is somewhat like soap opera. I've never watched one. So people may get carried away here today, but if someone's getting carried away, we're going to dong them. Let's hear the dong.
Why don't we say ring 'em instead of dong 'em?
Well, we're going to ring them or dong them or whichever it is. Now, we have quite a few people here today. I think you can see that. And one of the unique things about Tandem is that after 10 years, we probably have more people left than almost any company you can find. Now, I don't know if that's good or bad because it may mean no one else would hire any of us. But I think to illustrate this, we have a copy of our original patent, which is a very fundamental patent. And this patent has a name of 13 people on it, of which 12 were at Tandem. The other one was a gentleman named Bill Davidow. And of those 12 people who were at Tandem when we started, on the original patent, 10 are still at Tandem after 10 years. And I think that's a very unique type thing to happen for a company 10 years old and with our success. Now, before I tell you who else is sitting here beside me, I have to tell you about my hat. I was in Detroit this week. I got a big order. No matter what Bob thought, I did all the work. And as I was leaving Detroit, I was assured by 3 nice-looking ladies that if I wore this hat today, they would send me their telephone number. Anyway, it's well, I don't know how it's going to get here, but they were nice-looking. And to all the people in Detroit who were at the special beer bus this week when I got my big order, I hope you see this is the Detroit Lions hat. Well, sitting with me is Tom Perkins. Oh, hi, Tom. Tom, I think... Let me tell you about Tom. Tom and I worked together almost 20 years, and Tom was the gentleman that started HP and Computers, the first general manager. And a lot of the people sitting up here today have known Tom for the same amount of time. Tom was also the person that helped develop the idea of Tandem, and he's going to claim he wrote the whole business plan, but that's not true, only part of it. And he also financed Tandem when no one else would, and he's a famous venture capitalist. I think everyone knows that. So it's good to have you here today, Tom.
Great to be here.
And on my left is Bob Marshall. Hi, Bobby.
Hello, Jimmy. How you doing?
Bobby's going to tell us about our agenda for today.
Yeah, I like the hat. That's you and Tom Selleck, Detroit Tiger fans now all of a sudden. Is that the...
Well, what is every office I'm in, I'm a fan.
Oh, you're a fan, okay. Well,
I like all the offices.
We do have a real good show today. We have, first of all, we're going to meet on tape that's been pre-filmed some of the development people that were here the first year, and you'll see them on tape and get a little bit of their perspective on what happened and what they were going through in 1974 and 1975. Then we're going to talk about some special announcements. We have some awards that we put together for some employees, and then we're going to talk informally about with the people that were here the first year in terms of what some of their experiences were live. They're all sitting around the tables here, and we're going to get to meet each of them. Some of them are here and some of them are not here. Some of them are in other parts of the country, but we'll get a chance to talk to all of them. And then we're going to talk about a special announcement that Jim has for the entire company. But before we start any of that, we're going to hear from Tom Perkins and get his perspective on what life was like in 1974 and how we got into Tandem. Tom?
Thanks, Bob. Well, before Tandem actually started, I think some of you may know, but probably not all of you, Jimmy was a partner in our venture capital firm. And he worked on all kinds of exciting things, great ideas for commerce and industry. I think, you know, before Tandem, his big idea, which we really followed up on, it was a combination of a motorcycle and a ski mobile. And this thing was called Snow Job. This is true, you know, and we financed the thing. We went up in the Sierras and we rode around on them. And his second idea did a little better. He began to think about computers and the fact that it wasn't so good that they failed and all the problems. And sitting around the office, we started to play around with the idea of a multiprocessor. Didn't have a name for it in those days, and this was along in August of '74, and Jim began to talk to people, and he, although today is the anniversary of our incorporation, the actual genesis of the idea really started in the summer of '74, and Jim began to pull together the team, and we started to prepare a plan for this business, and contrary to what Jim says, this is the plan. I must say it's the best business plan I've ever read. It's true, I did write it. And I know I wrote it because I used words like imperative and dynamic, and the word exciting isn't in here. So we had a great idea and a great business plan, but there was a problem. Where are we going to get the money to finance this thing? And things were kind of tough in '74. It was a sort of a depression. Venture capital had sort of dried up because the capital gains rate had gone real high. So I thought we needed all the help we could get. Now, as you know, Jim has always been a model of sartorial excellence, a real clothes horse. And well, however, it wasn't always that way. And there were times when his shirt tail was out and the orange necktie didn't match the green jacket and things like that. So I thought before we went back to Wall Street, it would be important that we dress Jimmy up. You know, so Jim and I went to Brooks Brothers, and we spent a whole day. We started with the shoes, the socks, the shirts, the ties, and Jim says, who's going to pay for all this stuff? And I said, you are, Jim, And got it really, we got him really looking pretty good, and we went back to New York, and first thing Jim did was tell everybody, look at these clothes. Tom bought these for me. But we really tried to interest some investors in the company, and we couldn't. We didn't have any luck at all. And in fact, in that year of 1974, there were only two companies that turned out that were started that were capitalized at over $1 million, Tandem and a company back east called Internet, which has subsequently turned into a Tandem. I don't mean Internet, I mean Telenet, which has turned into a Tandem customer. So it came down, and Gene Kleiner and I were really the only people around that would put the money in the company. So we took a deep breath, gulped, and wrote a check for $1 million to get the thing started. Things went along pretty well, and we decided we would have a celebration. And this is along in late January, February sometime, and we decided to have all the employees of Tandem to my house for dinner. And everyone, it was about 30 of them at that time, came and with their spouses. And Tandem, we hired a bus so that there wouldn't be any problem with if we had a few drinks getting home. And things were going really good, and there had been a little drinking. There was a little pool game going in our pool room, and I have here a relic. This is the cue ball. It actually went through our window. But the party continued, but we knew everything was okay because we had a bus and a bus driver, and towards the end of dinner, all of a sudden the bus driver appeared in the dining room. He was absolutely smashed, and he was serving dessert, and incredible, and the thing was finally over, and the bus rolled down the hill, hit a few cars, but anyway, it was Tandem was well launched, so that gives you some feeling for the early days of Tandem.
Well, it was an exciting time. The thing that I remember exactly 10 years ago, at least last night, we were laying on the floor of my home trying to think of a name for Tandem, and we didn't have one, and we were going to incorporate, and so we really only had two proposals, one from our illustrious chairman of the board, Dandy Data. And then Mike Green had this idea for Tandem. We didn't really think that was a very good one, but we knew we had to pick one or the other, because you have to have one when you incorporate. And it was the only time we ever voted against Tom. That's really how we got the name Tandem. And the other early part of our history then was the beer bust. Now, people often wonder, how did we get a beer bust? You got to understand that of all the people sitting up here today that were here in that first year, only Dave Mackey and I aren't accepted as being technical, even though we're very technical. And so every week we would work on the design of, we'd work all week designing things. Sometimes Dave and I'd even design, but at the end of the week we just didn't have any respect, Dave and I. So we figured the way we could have respect was playing liar's dice. So we started this thing of having liar's dice every Friday. And we would plot the losses of all these other development people you see up here. Now, to facilitate, their losing, we had beer. That's where the beer came in. And so they did. They all lost, and Dave and I won. I don't think Dave won as much as me, but he was a winner as well. And so they started to think, because you know how they think about people with marketing backgrounds, that they only lie. So some of them started to only lie, and of course they kept losing. And then a few of them realized that once the liar's dice are thrown, that there's no probabilities, but what's in the dice is in the sweat and the eyes of the person that you're looking at. And a few of them started to lose less. But anyway, that's the true story about how the beer bust started. Now, you're going to see another thing a little later today about something called the bucket. Now, the barrel.
All these technical terms,
No matter what you hear today, the barrel is where people who were trying to stop smoking went to hide. Isn't that right, Bobby?
That's right.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to add a little there. So what's next? I think we got a tape.
Well, that's a real good introduction to the tape.
First thing I heard about Tandem was in an article in the Electronic News that said this company was being formed up with a group of people from Hewlett-Packard, and that Hewlett-Packard basically felt they wouldn't miss the loss.
Right at that time, HP had Well, we were going into a recession, and HP took a week off without pay, and that was perfect timing for Katzman and Green and Tribig and so forth. I mean, we all knew each other anyway.
In general, it was quite a stir at HP, because I think this is the first time any group of people had left en masse. They did not take it very well. They threw everyone out, except me.
A lot of us, I think, had just been kind of hoping that maybe there would be something developing, and because we kind of had a little bit of an idea that there was some kind of a thing going on.
I actually missed by only a couple of days of being Tandem's first minority hire. I was actually the second minority hire, in that I did not come from HP when I came to Tandem.
I don't know if anybody's mentioned this before, but we were very secretive. We didn't want anybody to know what we were doing. So, as a matter of fact, when I first interviewed, they wouldn't tell me what was going on. Basically, you just had to take it on faith that they were doing something interesting and that you'd like it. And I didn't find out until I accepted the job finally what was being built. I can recall hearing rumors from a friend I had in San Diego about what we were doing, and they thought, this person was at HP, and they thought that we were going to, because we were called Tandem, we were going to hook two HP 3000s together and do something along those lines.
I think everybody was hired to do some specific thing, and I was hired to do the compiler, which, you know, the TAL compiler, and you know, so that they could write all the rest of the software. And so it was real clear that was it.
Well, I was hired to design and build the operating system with Dennis McAvoy. And we rapidly broke it down into two different sections. One, doing all the I/O system, which Dennis took, and then everything else, which I did.
I would say they probably hired me because I had successfully done some disk work at HP. And since being a Tandem, I developed, 3 disk controllers with some extensions to, one of them went on for quite a long time, and then moved into some other areas, but it was disk work to begin with.
I was working. So when I stated that, that was okay because Dick Bixler was already coming to Tandem to do the disk controller work. And I knew what a UART was, so therefore I was a communication expert. And actually came in and was responsible for designing all the hardware for the data communications.
Came to work on December 16th and opened a new fresh notebook and started writing things down about you know, what I would like to do in a new CPU.
Stenderway, that was home sweet home.
And I thought I was going into a pawn shop in some kind of I mean, it's like pulling into a small shopping center and going up to a, I don't know, a small letter shop or something. It was really nondescript. You just pulled into this thing, and I think, I remember it was kind of like gray or, you know, anodized aluminum front with kind of, you know, the windows, not a lot of glass. And then there wasn't any furniture at first. You know, you go inside, and it's just kind of an empty room.
Well, it was way out in the middle of nowhere. There was very little development over in that part, except for industrial buildings. This was before Great America. There was no place to eat lunch except to get down to El Camino somewhere. I thought it was a terrible place. I think we all did. As soon as it looked like we were going to have a product, we beat it over here to Cupertino.
The thing that was interesting, at the time we were at Stender Way, and the back door faced onto a large mustard field, and summer is cricket season. And so I'd come in the middle of the night, and the only warmth in the area would be this building, which would have lights and warmth, and there would be hundreds or thousands of crickets leaping at the building, and there was no way to slip in the door, no matter how hard you tried, without at least 2 or 3 coming in. So we went through the summer having basically this infestation of crickets. Well, it was real interesting because these guys were real aggressive once they were in the building. They would, you know, leap at you while you were debugging. They would dive bomb the fans, and there'd be cricket pieces all over the place. When we finally finished evaluation of the 10 megabyte disk drive, we sent it back to control data, and found out later on that we sent back a few crickets in it.
Well, the working environment was great. The principal developers and myself and Dave Mackey all sat in the same room, so I got to hear the design discussions that went on and got a lot of insight that way.
we were all sort of in a room, and there were 3 private offices. And initially, Trybig took one, Lustig took one, and I forget who fought over the 3rd one. And rapidly decided that maybe some people needed a quiet place to work.
The barrel room was a room that it was actually, when I used it, it was Jack Lustig's office. The saying, when you're in the barrel, means that you were the next real critical item on the milestone charts.
The principal thing that it was used for was by Steve Wierenga, who was designing the processor, and he had gone on and on, working on it, and finally came the time when he had to produce logic, and he had been working with Pete Graziano on what the processor all should be, but turning it into real hard schematics was the next task. Steve basically locked himself in the room for 2 weeks, I think, and we didn't see him during that entire time. He was there when we got to work, and he was there when we left. I don't recall ever seeing him during that period. And finally, one day, he came out, and on every wall of the room, it was just plastered with pages of schematics, page after page after page, and that was the processor. And I believe there were very few modifications to that design subsequently. In that 2-week period, Steve basically did all the logic design.
And I was in there for latter part of March and early April, I think. Yeah, so I know what I was doing in March and April. What were you doing?
I think in April, I was in the tail end of April, I was in the barrel while I finished up my part of the CPU. And of course, there was a lot of nights where we stayed late and ate a lot of deli sandwiches with extra cream cheese and hot peppers and a lot of pizza.
People had different working styles. John Shipman, for example, seemed to work on a 30-hour day and would kind of precess around, and you'd have to leave him notes to find them.
I mean, it all sort of runs together. It was long days and many days for more than just the first year. It lasted for, I'd say, 2 or 3 years.
You kind of have to understand that when you really get involved in something, and this experience I think everybody should have. When you really want to do something really bad and you really like it, the hours are not too important. I mean, you can't work yourself to the point where you're totally exhausted, and you have to worry about your family and other things that are involved, if you still have one left. But it's a tremendous amount of fun. It's one of those kind of experiences that it's good to have.
The rewards were all internal. I mean, it was a matter of contributing, and the better we all did, or each did, the more likely we were to be successful. I think, at least in my mind, and I think it was pretty much true for everybody, the thought was of getting a company that was really going to go somewhere, more than it was thinking of personal and individual reward. I think we worked quite well together as a team, and that in and of itself felt good.
One of the things I look back on with a lot of satisfaction is that all of the initial crew of 12 or so people were totally depending on each other. If any one of the 12 had, failed his part of the effort, we all would have been out of a job. Or
when you had to interface to somebody, like we had a discussion on the I/O channel and how it should work, you were in a real-time, quote, argumentative, unquote, situation of getting your ideas out, and they were very much real-time critiqued by other people that also really knew what you were talking about, and we could arrive at things. And that's where the interactions were tough, because you were always talking to a person that knew as much about the thing that you were, okay?
Things just got done fast. Decisions were made immediately. All the resources you had were there, and you knew it.
We were fortunate in that in the year that we were just bringing the machine to life was sort of a down year for all of the suppliers of peripheral equipment. And so fortunately we could call up a salesman and say, gee, I'd like to evaluate your disk drive. And the guy says, how many and when do you want them? He'd ship over 2 drives that afternoon. You'd call another supplier, I need to evaluate your tape drive, and 2 drives would show up on your dock the next day. And so it was easy for us to gain the loan of just about any kind of I/O equipment that we needed.
We worked very hard to make sure we never had to buy either a line printer or terminals. So we had one-of-a-kind terminals attached to the HP 3000, supposedly all there is evaluation units. We also got a tally line printer in there as an evaluation unit because HP wouldn't ship us our own. And I think we also got a Kennedy tape drive. And there was one gentleman who repped 3 or 4 peripherals that we used extensively to get going on, and we ended up not buying him any from him. So we gave him a consolation prize, which is a bottle of nice scotch.
The 3000 was basically something you couldn't trust. As a developer, you'd sit there for 4 hours and type your heart away, and if you went to lunch, chances are what you typed in might not be there when you got back. So people got to making backups about twice a day just to be safe.
We had a first prototype powered up. That was the CPU board of the CPU set in June, and so that must mean that during the month of May it was out for wire wrap. First prototypes were all wire wrap boards, and I believe by August we had a complete CPU and memory set operational, and we're in the process of integrating 2 CPUs to make the first 2 CPU system.
During September is when we brought up the first 2 CPU system, I believe. Remember, Joel Bartlett and I were heavily involved in that process for a while.
It ran very well, and I think we had it up within the first day of having the wire wrap hardware because we'd done extensive simulation on top of the HP 3000 that we had as a development system. So we had the kernel completely running over there before. So in some ways, it was a little anticlimactic for the software. It's, well, we've got hardware and it all works, but at the same time, it was quite something because we'd actually built this thing and got a little life out of it.
Ken Barton, who did the cabinet design, was a real proud daddy when he brought in his first cabinet. And we all stood around. It was the first real hardware we had seen, and it was really an uplifting experience to have this cabinet come in that previously had only been a couple of artist renderings. We all stood around and praised it for about a half hour, and then we took about an hour and a half and criticized every point of the design to make it perfect.
Everybody was trying out the cabinet with gold side panels, blue side panels. Dick walked in one morning and brought an empty carton of milk, some old carrot stubs, and a few other vegetables, put them inside the cabinet, and when Ken Barton opened it up, he almost went bananas. Dick said, "I thought it was a refrigerator. I couldn't believe that was a cabinet for a computer."
Actually, one thing I do remember is the Business Week photographers were spending an afternoon trying to take this shot of trying to get Jimmy reflected in his cabinet. Ken Barton standing off on the side with mirror glaze, buffing up the cabinet to get bright spots out of it, and getting Jimmy to shine just right. And I think this took about 3 hours.
It was a big thing, and yet it wasn't really tied to any internal accomplishments. I think at that point, all of us knew that we could make a non-stop system, and we were getting to the point of saying, okay, we know we can now finish this development and have it work.
We had a goal, and we were all absolutely committed to reaching it. And we had no doubt that we were going to reach it.
That was about it. It was a matter of winning, and there was no possibility other than winning.
When problems show up, you address them, you solve them, and you move on, and you keep a very satisfying feedback loop that's saying you're making progress all the time. It's a very large factor than letting a problem fester and sit there for too long a time. Okay, and I think that's what I probably remember out of Jimmy's involvement. I mean, it was always, just as he states today, his office is always open, so he gets to spend time working on problems. That's what he did in the original time.
At some point in time, he'd sort of stop and talk with you where you're going, where you're headed, but also not so much what you're working on as he's always working on new things. Thinking of how to do something different or what's coming next kind of thing. I think was a lot of the conversations that went on.
Also, what's slowing us down?
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
Is there anything we need to go faster?
Yeah. He's a real spark plug. So he'd come around, and I think he used to come around and help me find bugs in the compiler. I mean, he was, at one time, I think part of his thing, he was going to become fluent in Spanish. And so he was writing a program that, verb conjugator or something like that in Spanish, and it was kind of interesting because you get some really strange words coming out of there, in Spanish anyway. So that was kind of an interesting thing, and so he'd come around to do that, and I'm sure that it was his kind of way of showing a great deal of interest. But he was always interested in everything, and I think he knew a great deal about what was going along in all of them. You know, he's a rather exceptional individual in that respect.
Actually, the first year, the biggest reward, and this is a 20/20 hindsight thing, is actually looking back at the friendships that were formed with people. And I'd say that's probably the greatest reward out of the efforts of that first year.
I don't know, you get to take that for granted after a while. I mean, you get to know people so well, and you know, you're around them all the time. So I know it's kind of corny, but it's a little bit like, I guess, kind of an extension to your family or something, because you know these people so closely.
The things that were going on at the time were the teamwork and the complete dedication toward being successful and doing everything we could to make things be successful, everything. And the wrap-up that I would have is that I hope we never lose that. I think that was the important thing that made us successful, and I think that's exactly the sort of thing that'll continue to make us successful. So let's not lose that.
Okay, well, we're all back here together, and I'm seated here with a group of people who were here the first year. Some of the people you saw on the tape, and some we're going to get a chance to talk to everyone that's in the room here that was here the first year, so that'll be interesting to get some of their perspectives besides what was on the tape. Naturally, I'm with the technical group here since I worked closely with them during the time that I was, we were doing the design and working the bugs out of the system. So first of all, I'd like to have you meet Jim Straley. Jim is at the end of the table. He was employee number 19, and Jim joined us as one of those super technicians that every company needs. He can fix anything, anywhere, anytime. Jim? What's your perspective about the first year at Tandem?
Well, if it hadn't been for you, we probably wouldn't have got all those bugs fixed.
I agree.
The one thing I do remember was I was working on the system one day, and Tom Perkins comes walking in, and usually he was escorted in, but this day somehow he snuck in. And he comes walking up to the system, and here I am buried in the system with scope probes hanging all over the place, logic analyzer and everything else, and he says, "How's things going?" And it was like, what do I say now? I said, "It's going really great. We've got this little tiny problem we need to fix." Bob?
That's terrific. And you fixed it, I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Next to Jim, we have Ken Robeski. Ken is employee number 16, and Ken was originally brought in to work on software manuals. I see you didn't leave him behind, you brought him with you?
No, this right here is the original documentation for the Tandem operating system. This is the complete set right there. I brought one other little memento of the past, and that's the original Robeski diagram.
Robeski diagram. It's a company-wide term right now. Right. Yeah. The old Robeski diagram right there. Oh, that's great. Next to Ken, we have one of the fellows that interviewed me when I joined the company. We sat for about 2 hours discussing how to calibrate disk drives. Of course, that's Rocky Graziano. Rocky was a user of disk drives at Hewlett-Packard. I think he plugged in a cassette once or a disk pack once into a disk drive. I had just left Diablo Systems. We were building about 1,000 disk drives a week, and of course, Rocky was telling me how to calibrate these things. So, Rocky, welcome. What do you remember about Tandem?
Well, I basically remember leaving HP, or actually getting the bum's rush, and coming over to this little company in Stender Way, and my first assignment was to design a processor with Mike Green and Steve Wieringa. And processor design is not revolutionary, it's kind of evolutionary. And I think the thing that I remember the most was on June the 19th, about midnight, we ran the first processor from that set of microcode. And that was my contribution, and it was an unbelievable high, and the next day my bubble was broken by Joel calling me up and telling me, "You have a bug." And that's, I guess, what I remember.
And you fixed the bug?
Of course.
Great. Okay, well, on my right here, we have one of the familiar faces around Tandem, another fellow that interviewed me when I was joining the company. Again, he was going to help me a lot in manufacturing from the engineering side of the house, and in fact, he did. John Despotakis, employee number 13. You know, I almost would have guessed you'd be employee number 13.
First minority hire. I have a copy of an article here that I read in the electronic news that was dated December 1974. And it talks about a new company being formed by a group of HP alumni. And there's a little paragraph I'd like to read from here. It says, Dick Anderson, general manager of the Data Systems Division, said the exodus represented a cross-section of our lab, a handful of people out of a few hundred. He said he would have no trouble replacing them from personnel within the lab. And he's referring to all of the people that were leaving Hewlett-Packard to start up Tandem. And so I just wanted all you guys that came from HP to know that you weren't missed.
They're all replaced.
And they got replaced very quickly. But I read this article and I picked up the phone after I got the number through information and asked them, I said, do you need a design engineer to help with the product? And about a couple, 3 weeks later, I was working for the company. So I was basically a walk-in off the street. So.
Well, you told Jim how many children you had, and he couldn't turn you down. He had to get you down. Okay, well, next to John, we have Steve Wieringa, a household word around the company. Steve is employee number 8, and as you saw on the tape, he was hired to do the original CPU design. Steve? Hi.
Hi. I have a souvenir I dredged up this morning to remind myself what was happening that first year. That diagram you see over here is kind of a picture of the first debug setup, our wire-up prototype, CPU, and control panel. And just to remind myself about how quickly things went that first year, the first date here is wire-up prototype powered up on May 19th, 1975. And 2 days later, on May 21st, it says here it was running the microdiagnostics. And
Are you going to take us through the full 10 years here?
2 months. And 3 pages later, it's the end of the notebook. That was the end of the problems.
What is that thing you have in your...
Well, I thought you'd like to see this. I remember having an argument with Bob, I think it was his second day at Tandem. Bob didn't believe that we needed to test integrated circuits, because if you tested them, you just throw some of them away.
That's right. Part of our cost reduction program.
Yeah. So I think this was done probably without Bob's blessing, but this is the first piece of manufacturing automatic test equipment built at Tandem. This was the prom tester for those microcode proms Pete had.
Oh, that's true. You can't say we don't believe in high technology in manufacturing. That's great. Well, that's the technical group here. Now, I have just a couple things to talk about before we turn it over to Tom's table. One is that I'd like to we have established a program for 10-year employees, and it's an ongoing program. We've also established a item for 5 years employees, and so the 10-year employee thing will be this plaque, and I think we have a shot of that somewhere. It's a plaque that's should be brought up here. There it is, and that's a plaque of Jim's That's a picture of Jim's plaque, so all 10-year employees will get one of those as they hit their 10-year mark. Also, something representative of a 5-year employee will be something like this pen set that we have. It's a pen set with your name on it, and so all 5-year employees will get a pen set like that or an equivalent thing. And then for the 10-year employees, we have something extra that Tom's going to talk about. Now, we were supposed to get a phone call from Ralph Perry's as part of this conversation. Is Ralph on the line?
Yes, sir.
Well, Ralph, how you doing? You've been sitting on the line waiting through all this?
Absolutely, but I think it's worth it. I just called to wish all those illustrious folks on the... to wish you all a happy 10th anniversary.
Ralph, that looks like a Detroit City line up there.
That's where I used to work.
Well, what can you tell us about your recollections of your first experience at Tandem?
Well, there were a lot of them, but specifically I remember the interviewing process. We used to have a fellow that was noted for his finesse working with us, a fellow by the name of Jerry Everett, and he tried very hard to recruit me for quite some time, but he would never tell me what the product was all about. And he went through extraordinary lengths to get me to come out there and take a look at it, and I told him that no, the world didn't need another computer because he didn't tell me what it was all about. Finally, he sent Jack Binkley over, and Jack sprained my arm, and I agreed to come out and see the machine. And they timed it so that I would show up on a Friday afternoon, and Pete Graziano bought me a beer, and Jim Trevig was there, and they showed me the machine. It was a wire wrap at the time, and I think all it did was a load A instruction. And I said, I'll take the job.
Didn't know what it was.
And then Jim said, nope, it's time. First we have to interview you. and the way that happened was he took me out on Highway 101 in his Porsche. We went over to get a part for his radio that he was going to fix. And instead of the highway number 101 being interpreted as a number, he thought that was the speed limit. And I said, Jim, I've already accepted the job.
Well, that's terrific, Ralph. You didn't know what it was, but you figured you could fix it, whatever it was, right?
Absolutely.
Ralph, good talking to you, and thanks for sharing this with us. We miss you here. Now, all right, Ralph. Now, Tom, how are things over at your table there?
Well, things are great at this table, and I'm also here surrounded by top technical guys, and at my table, I think the oldest employee is Dennis McAvoy. He was employee, I think, Dennis, you were number 6, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Still, yeah, that's right. Still employed.
I hope.
Dennis, what was it like on the very first day at Tandem? Tell me about it.
Well, the first day was my first day, and in fact for Steve and Pete and Tom Blease was December the 16th in 1974, and we showed up on the first day and we were presented with the schedule. We didn't know what it is we were building or how we were going to build it, but Mike Green had already figured out how long it was going to take. To reinforce the fact that we didn't know what we were going to build, the original system as conceived by Green and Katzman was going to be 32 processors. The processor was going to fit on one board. The board was going to be 12 by 15. It was going to hold 8K of memory on that board, and that 8K would run the kernel operating system. But none of us wanted to build a little dinky system like that, so we all built something that was single processor that was a lot faster than the machine that we had worked on before. But I treasure this schedule. We almost made it, in fact. We just missed by a couple months.
Right. Well, that's talking about Green and Katzman is great, because I remember I talked to Mike about who was in charge of the software. I said, Mike, do you think you can make the software work on a system like this? And he said, oh yeah, the software is no problem. I don't think the hardware will work, but we'll have lots of software. And I talked to Katzman, and I got exactly the reverse answer. The hardware was no sweat, but the software would never fly. And I thought, well, we may have a shot at this. Also at the table here is Dick Bixler, who is employee number 11, and we've seen Dick on the tape. But I had a question, Dick. I wonder what is it about Tandem that such a very high percentage of the people that started the company are in fact still here? Is there something comes to mind about that?
There are several reasons, actually, I think, Tom. The first one is that during the first year, we had a little picture that we used to pass around as each person was hired. And I don't remember what the cartoon was in it, but the caption was "Last hired, first fired." And I know that I was personally very motivated to make sure that my efforts would get us to the point where I could pass that on as quickly as possible. And I think that the lesson from that was to realize that for the job that I was doing, and I think each of us had this, there was nobody else to do it. Basically, was such a motivator that motivation has never left.
I think that's true, and I think that's still the spirit at Tandem. Dave, you were employee number 22, still a very small company. What are your recollections about Tandem in those days?
Well, one of the things that I was hired to do QA on the operating system, and Ken mentioned earlier that everybody was confident in succeeding in that, but my job was to find bugs, and since I started with Joel's kernel and went for weeks and weeks without finding any problems, I really wasn't sure whether I was going to succeed. But then I hit the I/O and the file system, which Dennis provided us, and I knew I was going to succeed.
It's too bad you never had a chance to QA the TAL compiler.
One of the things, though, that was kind of a reward at the end of the QA, and that was I got to go with the system on the computer caravan. And I think we actually have some pictures that were taken from some of these first shows. I don't know whether they can put that up or not. You can see we were all a lot younger then. There's another picture after this one here, and that's Dave Mackey there, and I'll let Dave explain what it was that he was doing when it gets to his turn in that. So.
Okay, those pictures are great. I think that one of Tribeca is unbelievable. Next at my table is Steve Hayashi. Now, I had a very great interest in what Steve Hayashi was up to because he was working on the power supplies for the system. And I had a very interesting experience with power supplies when I was at Hewlett-Packard. We're going to pioneer the development of a switching power supply. And for a while there, what we really had to do was increase the fire insurance on the building because the thing would blow up just as fast as we could put it back together. It would blow up, and we ended up without any power supplies for a whole line of computers. And I remember going to the annual HP management review session and opening my remarks by saying it's a pleasure to be here because I really thought Dave Packard was going to solve the problem from the top down. So so I remembered about power supplies. So when Steve came on board and started working on a switching power supply, I was intensely interested. But it worked. How did you pull that off?
Well, I took the approach of if I'm going to blow it up, I might as well blow it up right at the beginning. So I think I was sharing a bench, I think, with Elaine Robeski, and she got very nervous during this time because about every hour or so something would explode and there'd be vast quantities of smoke and flame. But it was I said if I ever got a power supply that I couldn't blow up, then it ought to be good enough for the Tandem system. And we finally arranged that with one of our vendors after having gone through about 3 or 4 with, as I said, vast quantities of smoke and flame.
Oh, yeah. Well, those were exciting days. Also at our table here is Jerry Smith, who didn't see a lot of in the early days because I think he figured the easiest thing to do was simply work all night. You know, he had crickets for company and what the hell, and less interface problems, but He was originally hired to do a product called Shadow. What was all that about?
Well, basically, Rocky Graziano had the job of doing Iowa diagnostics. He'd figured out he had enough stuff that by conventional techniques it would take him 7.5 years. He knew from experience he worked twice as fast as the average programmer who did this sort of thing, so it would only take him about 3 years. Unfortunately, he had 6 months. So what he did is he said, well, instead of writing all these programs, which will take me 3 years, what I'll do is I'll have this system that lets me write the programs. You know, it's a complete system that gives me a simple language to write in, does all the work for me. All I have to do is give it a few high-level instructions, and then I can write each program in only 2 weeks. So he hired me. And in fact, the only reason I'm at this table is that he hired me 6 months ahead of time because he figured that's how long it would take. So we had this 7.5 years work to do and build a tool to do the 7.5 years of work, and we sort of blew it. It took us 7 months.
But that really did speed up the program. That was one of the keys to the development, I remember. That was great. Well, according to my notes, we have a telephone call coming in from Bob Unansky, who is an old friend all the way back to Hewlett-Packard days with myself. And Bob is one of these remarkable guys that has worn so many different hats at Tandem. It would fill a whole coat rack. And he's in the field now. And Bob, are you on the telephone?
Yes, Tom.
Oh, great. Bob, I understand that you're down in Florida now, and recently you were involved in the getting of a very large order, one of the few orders that Jimmy Trybig didn't actually get, or take credit for anyway. Can you tell us what's it like now? You've done so many different things at Tandem. How is it now to be out interfacing with the customers?
Well, Tom, I really love my new job. I've been in Orlando here now since February, and we've been reasonably successful and managed to sell a few systems down here. And it's really kind of overwhelming to see all the people there, and really to really think back and reflect on the good old days at Stender Way. I think to look back for a minute and think about what it was in the early days that impressed me the most was, I think I was probably the closest to the first real live user or customer type person on the Tandem system. And I remember in those days how the development people would tell me how easy it was going to be to write nonstop programs. And of course, all I had to do was learn the system, put the education programs together, and then teach our customers how to do it. And of course, thank God for Dave Hinders, who managed to come up with some help for us, because the development people told me and assured me that it wasn't going to be a problem because we were only going to sell this system to very, very smart, intelligent customers. And so training wasn't going to be a problem.
Well, that's great, but that's right. You did do all the original training for all our earliest customers, and it must be fun now to be dealing with customers that don't have to be necessarily the most brilliant and skilled in the world to use the product.
Right, we've come a long way, and I think that from my perspective, the thing that the Tandem has given us all as individuals is freedom to grow and develop as individuals. And I certainly have developed a lot of confidence in myself in experiencing different jobs within Tandem, and it really is very, very interesting and fantastic experience. Well.
Right, all choked up.
All choked.
Well, I think that is right about Tandem. You know, when we started Tandem, a lot of us were from Hewlett-Packard, and we thought of that as being such a giant company. Tandem is about the size now that Hewlett-Packard was in those days when we started Tandem, and I think it's great that as now as a large company, we can still have the kind of opportunity and exciting things to do that we did in the really early days. Bob, thanks a lot for calling in. Appreciated hearing from you again.
Okay, thank you.
Bob Marshall indicated that we have a gift for the 10-year employees, and it's my pleasure to tell you something about that. I think it's a great thing, and what in fact it is, for each employee on his 10th anniversary of being an employee, he will receive a free Dynamite station computer. There it is on the screen. And in fact, the first two recipients of this computer will be Jimmy Trybig and Tom Perkins. So I hope in Austin they're cranking up to churn those out for us. But on your anniversary date, as it comes up, that will be a gift from Tandem. Jimmy, I think we ought to turn the discussion over to you at this point.
Well, that's pretty exciting. I can't wait to get mine. We have Vic Pera in the field on the telephone. He says he's in a hurry to catch an airplane to get a $10 million order for this quarter, I assume. Are you there, Vic?
Yes, I am, Jim.
Well, if y'all don't know, Vic Pera was our first field analyst, and what I remember the most about Vic is at a first trade show, the one where Dave's laying down or something like that. Well, Vic was demonstrating nonstop by using a banana to punch the halt button. Are you there, Vic?
Yeah, I remember.
Employee number 32.
I do remember. You want me to comment on that?
No, whatever you want to talk about. Not too much. There you go. Not too much detail.
No. Well, I've been listening to and enjoying the conversations previously, and I think if I were to recollect on Tandem, there are two things that I remember clearly and very fondly. One was when Jack Binkley and I installed the first two Tandems we sold in Citibank and ESBA. And Joe Bartlett, back then we didn't have any documentation, and Joe Bartlett had sent me a bunch of handwritten notes. And to do this, and then if that failed, try this kind of a thing. But the thing that got me was his last note. It said, if this fails, call me, you're in trouble. Fortunately, we sold core machines in those days, and when Binkley powered it on, the thing came up running, and I immediately felt like a genius. But the second thing I remember much more fondly is when I left the systems organization and moved into sales, I worked on an account many of us remember known as Raytheon. And the thing that impressed me most about it was how much help I got from all my friends out there on the West to sell that system at a very difficult time for Tandem. And it's been like that for my entire tenure. And I am just as thrilled to be here today as I was back then.
Well, Vic, we're just as thrilled to have you here today as we were then as well. Are you off to get a big order?
No, actually, we were just wrapping it up, Jim. We're over here at South Central Bell in Birmingham, Alabama, and it's not a big one, but it will lead to several. And we're trying to press it into this quarter.
No, I remember my first cold call there 4 or 5 years ago, Vic.
Yeah. In fact, you met
I'm
with
glad you're finally closing it.
Well, Jim, it took us a long time to recover.
Well, it's sure good to talk to you, Vic. Happy anniversary.
I guess that's my cue to say goodbye.
Well, we only get 2 minutes each. Yanansky hung in there. I think it was because we thought he was going to shed a tear or something. We gave him more than 2 minutes. We love you too, Bob.
Well, thanks very much. It's really been
Sell a lot this quarter, Vic. We need it.
Oh, well, we're trying.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, next we have Joe Bartlett sitting here on my left. Joe was hired to, you probably heard his name a couple times today, to develop one half of the operating system. And of course, he claims he not only developed the whole operating system, but everything. I first met Joel at Hewlett-Packard in about 67 or 68 or 69. I don't remember. He was a student at Stanford with Wendy, his wife, who's, as y'all know, one of our best development people at Tandem. And we hired him in training. Bob Yaninski actually hired him, and I supported that. And I tell you that why I say that is because I wrote the first TAL program on Tandem. And I was going to ask Joe, as he's sitting here next to me, if he would support me being hired in development.
Well, you know, Jim, the strength of a computer system is not so much an operating system or hardware or anything else. It's in the applications that people do on it. Now, I have some notes here from a demo that we put together to hustle some second-round money from some New York bankers. And I can see some notation here for some things like command interpreters, a virtual memory test. But the key demo, though, is your Spanish conjugator. That was the first application. Now, I mean, you know, and then sort of later on next year, we finally finished this thing up. And, I have a note here in my notebook. On the 5th of May in 1976, we claimed that we had A00 release all made and submitted. And I think Dennis McAvoy and I were a couple of happy guys here. But unfortunately, on the 11th of May, we had to fix the first bug. Now, our total output for a year and a half was this. This is the initial operating system, database, and communication products. So I think Dennis and I certainly owe a lot to the people who've come since the first year for helping us be here 10 years. But even though it's 9 years old, I think it's still good for something. David's always been the shortest man at Tandem. So David, I'd like you to give you this, give you a little boost on your chair. Jimmy?
Thank you, Joe. You can. I think I'll skip to David Gregg next because David Gregg was our employee number 14, and I actually remember interviewing him. And when he came in, he had a broken leg, and I said, "Well, what happened to your leg?" And he said, "Well, she told me 2 lies. She told me she was single and she lived on the 2nd floor."
David, you didn't tell her. Right?
Oh, 1st floor, yeah. I get that mixed up sometimes. But anyway, someone comes in and tells you a story like that, you have to feel sorry for them. And so we figured we needed someone, as you can tell, everyone feels it, we needed someone that we could chat with. And that was David, and so naturally he got the charge, got the responsibility for communication, or data communication. Hello, David.
Hello, Jim. Are you going to give me a full 2 minutes?
Yeah, you get the whole 2 minutes.
Well, I've always, you ask about things you remember. I'd like to take the time right now to set the record straight, all right? There's been a lot of rumors out there. I was a giant in this industry before I came and met Mackey. David Mackey was the gentleman that gave me my short tag, and I've lived with that for 10 years. Thank you, David. And if anybody has ever found the Memorial Urinal Award over in Sunnyvale, I'd sure like it back. It's an important memento. But there's one thing about the early days is that startup companies are always viewed as like you really wing it and you just get in there and you do it. Well, we really had a very thorough documentation system in place when we started the company. I have here an exemplary example of, and this is Joel's work, right? This is the one page was the first product description ever written. It had such nice wording as return state of data in line in some bit, rest junk. I think it's, now I knew how to interpret that, which makes me wonder about myself. And then our next thing was a one-page technical description, which again Joel wrote. He did the whole design, did everything. And it was enough that I could just put my little ECR log down here and we fixed all the bugs. And so here is what I remember as the first classical piece of documentation of my efforts here at Tandem. Thank you, Joel, for and these things. Thank you, Jim.
Does that set the whole record straight? You mean we've been telling the truth all these years about the other things and you're not fixing any of those? He broke his leg sometime again after that, as I recall. On my right is Jack Binkley. Jack was employee number 36, and I remember Jack, and I'll tell you why I knew we should hire him. I taught him machine language programming. And anyone that survived me teaching them machine language programming had to be great, so he was hired on the spot.
Thank you, Jim. You were good. You were a good instructor. My contribution here was in the first years was taking all of the culmination of these guys' efforts and the hard work and taking the first system out, as Per has mentioned, and installing it at Citibank in May of '76. At the same time, we also were going to participate in the NCC at '76 in June, and so we had to build 2 systems and check them out, and fortunately they all worked very well.
Not fortunately, we were fortunate to have you, Jack.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Dave Mackey. Dave was employee number 12, and I think when we first hired him, we thought he might be technical. We didn't really know. Now, I do remember the design of our system said that you had to have 2 power sources going to every controller. And I don't remember who it was, as someone in development claimed it couldn't be done technically. So Dave designed a circuit using relays. No semiconductors, no tubes. He considered tubes. But relays so we could share power. And the development organization was so repulsed that they solved the technical problem, but we knew Dave didn't belong in development, so he became our first marketing person. I remember that all right, David?
That's kind of close, kind of close. I think one of the things I remember most was Jim asked us to find mementos. I was going through my desk drawer yesterday, and I found one. The night we got our first order, we were at a trade show in Washington. It was the first order from Citibank. You're never really certain when you start this kind of thing that you're ever going to get a first order. We got it. It led to a beer or two amongst the group. It ended up at some unearthly hour in the morning, and Jim couldn't remember what hotel he was at all. So I said, okay, I can remember what hotel I'm at, come stay with me tonight. So he came back to my hotel and stayed in my room that night. Next morning he gets up and he borrows me razor, has a shower, and asks if I got a clean pair of underpants he can borrow. So I lent him a clean pair of underpants, and you know, we got back, and after a couple of weeks he returned the underpants, and there what I found in my desk. These are the underpants worn by our illustrious leader the day after we got our first order, and you can keep them.
I don't recognize that. That looks like something Mackey would wear, I'm sure. Is that it, David?
That was it.
Well, I knew we should have left him off. Next, we have Elaine Foster. She was employee number 30, and she was the first person in production at Tandem. And y'all have heard about this room called the Barrel. Wasn't that what it was called? She and David Gray rewired the motherboard 10 times in the Barrel. We didn't see them for weeks at a time, right, David? Well, of course, that's a joke, right, Lane?
Exactly.
Elaine's husband's sitting up here with us.
I was primarily hired at Tandem to do most of the tech wire, solder, cut, jumper, fix, mostly just about anything. I have here one of the lab books that we kept during the time. And I wanted to read this one little thing. It says, "There was a short to ground. Spent most of the day trying to find it. Finally decided to put the board aside."
That was the Tandem way. If it didn't work, it's party. If it didn't work, throw it away. Well, I think everyone stayed under 2 minutes. We got everybody, and so now we want to come to the front and oh, I forgot one thing, didn't I? I was supposed to announce today that the board has approved a 100-share option for every employee. And to continue the tradition that I spoke about at the last teleconference, and I was criticized for being evasive. That was the rumor. So anyway, now we have a birthday cake, I think. Is that not next? Nope. Yeah, I think we're all.
We're on schedule.
Well, I think everyone's supposed to come up, right?
Yep.
What does it say? 74 to 84, a decade of excellence.
That's a beautiful cake.
Are we opening one?
Just one? Yeah, let's have it.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Are we going to take them off in tandem? Let's do it in tandem.
Okay.
Are we ready?
In tandem. 3 processors here.
You got enough glasses here?
Should we pour some in there as we do it?
Let's get some glasses. We'll all start pouring in.
Oh.
There you go. Sure.
It's a new type of glass.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, this is a short glass.
It's better to be short than ugly. Like Nike.
David's both.
Here we go.
How are we doing?
I'll take one back here. How about here?
Let's see.
Need one? We all set?
Can we got one for everybody?
Need one more.
Where? Now we have a special toast tonight from, to quote the words of our illustrious chairman, that I think this, I guess we'll have 3 toasts, but the first toast from me, since I can never forecast the future, and I'm always misquoted by the press, but this is to celebrate, from my point of view, the next 10 years, at which time Tom Perkins says that we'll be much over $10 billion in size.
Right. You don't have to take 10 years. I mean, you can do it faster.
Well, that's to that.
Well, I'd just like to say that the first 10 years is really the beginning. I think from where the company's positioned today, the next 10 years is even going to be more exciting, and I think that's the best thing we can say about today. Cheers.
Well, I'd just like to say happy birthday, Tandem. It's been great, and I look forward to hanging in there with you for another 10.
I may have one more toast.
We thought so, yeah.
I was asked, why I was so motivated to want to come to work every day, and It was actually this morning for French TV, and we were describing how we believe that what we have to do to be successful, which is to have outstanding, happy, motivated people. And they said, well, there were some other companies in Silicon Valley that would say that there's another way. In fact, there's one guy being quoted a lot right now, and I had to sit there for a second and think that, well, that guy, they have a successful company too. But it's quite a different company, and so what's the difference? And the difference is that you come to work and you really like each person that you see and meet, and that you feel wonderful about being part of the environment. And so I like to propose a toast that we make Tandem a lot better company in the next 10 years that come in terms of being together and having a wonderful place to work. Oh, okay. I wouldn't know where to start cutting that. Okay, now how do we cut it? Where do we put it?
Right at the top and work out.
Well, where do we put it on when we cut it?
Just cut it. Just cut it. They'll take it from there.
Well, you probably shouldn't start at the bottom.
Franklin's way would be to start
Yeah.
at the top and work it
There's no respect even after 10 years. Who's the first one be from? I think I did good on that one.
Yeah. I'd quit if I were you, Chip.
In a natural way.